And MLS sides have entered the tournament properly, and they've had a pretty good showing so far. Only two of its side have gone out. They went out. One went out in penalties. One got pretty much walked off the field. They had mostly rotated lineups for the most part. Certain sides put out stronger ones than others. Why MLS couldn't just let everybody go and say use whatever team you want to use? Don't know. Never know. We may never know. But we've covered that at length already. But today's focus is more on the only remaining MLS Next Pro side in the tournament, New York City FC2. The Baby Boys from the Bronx have knocked off two consecutive USL Championship sides to make it to the round of 16. In the past, we've chatted about some of the negative ramifications if they were to make it all the way and won the whole thing, right? And we've had that conversation here before. But a new issue came up that never crossed, at least my mind. I don't know about yours. But New York City FC2 just won $25,000 for being the furthest advancing third division side in the tournament. Obviously, this has shown a relatively not so good light on this whole thing. But for me, it stops and ends on why the tournament is important, not for MLS, but for the lower league sides, right? That money is massive for a NISA team, for example, which is struggling to pay players, referees, I mean, the works, right? For a USL one side that's a little bit more stable, there's a little bit more money, it's still massive, right? You can go and invest in things that are a little bit more advanced, right? If you're building a new stadium, for example, like Lexington is, that helps offset some costs. Now they got knocked out in the first round, that's whatever, but just as an example. But instead of giving it to one of those sides, US Open Cup committee has to give it to a second team of an MLS side that is backed by City Football Group, which, for those of you who may not know, is literally owned by a United Arab Emirates prince. Not great. Not technically against the rules, right? Like most things in this saga, there's a spirit that kind of comes into this, right? So while it's not technically wrong, it feels wrong, right? I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
You could not have had a worse third division side win this award.
Literally.
Literally the richest organization in all of American soccer has won the 25,000. I think City Football Group probably literally like blows their nose into $25,000. Like they will drop $25,000 easily. Like it means nothing to them. Whereas, like you said, $25,000 could be the difference between a club, staying afloat and sinking
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're like NISA. I mean, obviously, it's not like they're just handing it to NYCFC. Like NYCFC got it because they were able to stay in the tournament the longest. And like you said, they won back-to-back games against USL championship sides, which would be viewed as, if we're going to tier it, second tier. I want to say they earned it, but at the same time, it's literally the same conversation of they have literally like this endless amount of resources and money because of who's their owners. So, I mean, I feel kind of, what's the right way to say it? I don't want to say scummy, but it feels wrong. I think, like you had said.
Well, scummy's a great. I think scummy's a great word for it, right? Like there was this whole fight about why they shouldn't be in here, why it's better to leave them out of it, and whatever, right? And Don Garber's like, I want them to play for experience. Fine. Well, they ended up taking away, and again, because the whole focus is like Don Garber is trying to hide this desire for more money or more worth, more value out of his decision. And now he's taking away $25,000 from the lower leagues. Like it just all adds up on top of each other, right? Now, as I mentioned before, like there's a spirit of the cup and why it's played, and you can make arguments about attendance and who cares about the cup and who's at fault for why attendance is so low. Like all of that stuff that we've talked about before has nothing to do with this specific issue, right? That money, as we mentioned, is life changing versus something that, like, I'm trying to find the right words for it. Like it is such a big part of what the lower leagues need to continue to move on, right? And I'll use the term survive for lack of a better one. And I think you put it really funny. Like City Football Group blows their nose in a $25,000 check and throws it away. I get that they did this, and you were talking about it before, like all on merit, right? Like there was this whole conversation 2 weeks ago where oh, nobody cares about or we shouldn't want Europe to do the salary cap because it's all about, oh, more money doesn't automatically make you a better team, right? Like you still like Wrexham, for example, right? Oh, Wrexham has, triple the salary of anybody else, but they still had to win it on the pitch, right? Well, New York City played an $8 million purchase, which is probably more than any of the lower league teams in the last 5 years have spent combined, right? They spent $8 million. This guy played him in the U.S. Open Cup against a USL Championship side, whatever, right? You can go out and be like, oh, they did it on merit. It doesn't matter how much money they spent, blah blah blah, right? Like there is that side to it, but I don't think it plays into this whole idea of what we're talking about, where you are like you don't need it. There's this whole thing like you don't need it. If you don't need it, why are we taking it, right? And I guess that kind of goes into this idea of like, how do you fix this problem? Because this is always gonna, if this is the way that it goes with MLS Next Pro teams being a part of it, or should you stop it from happening? I guess is from your point of view.
I mean, yeah, it should definitely stop from happening. And I think you do that by just not calling MLS Next Pro sides third division sides. I mean, they're academies. That's what they are at the end of the day. You have a parent ownership group, which obviously everybody knows is the parent ownership groups have plenty of money. We've seen the expansion fee amounts. Like there's plenty of money to go around in MLS. They don't need this money. These aren't true third division sides. They're academies. Like it's where the youngsters for these MLS sides go to play. I think you call it what it is. You don't consider them in the competition for the 25K purse. And then anybody else like USL1, NISA, or any of those other leagues below USL Championship should be the only ones considered for that prize. That's what I would do.
That's right about where I'm at too. If you're gonna say that the reason you want them there in the first place is so that they can meaningful competition against non MLS Next Pro teams, fine. Like that's totally fair. Include a rule that says the $25,000 then goes to the highest advancing non MLS affiliated side, right? If it's an MLS Next Pro side, like, I'll just use the one that's on the top of my head. Albany is rumored to get an MLS Next Pro side, independent, right? Not tied to City or Red Bull or whatever. If they go off and do it, Chattanooga is the one that's not tied to anybody. If they went on and did the whole thing, that's fine, right? Do your thing. But if you're tied to a team that can literally just loan you $8 million players or pay for you to survive, right? Like you're in existence because the team above you has created you. You should be nowhere near this $25,000 purse because, as we just mentioned, you don't need it. It doesn't matter to you. Now, there is one that's like it goes to the players and the coaches and stuff like that. That's fine and fair, but let's be real. Like, is it actually going to the players? And with City Football Group, you're damn right it's not going to those players. They're taking it to pay Erling Haaland's signing bonus. But there's the other.
That's probably like 100th of his signing bonus.
Literally, right? Well, and then there's the other way to go about it, right? If you don't want to say like, oh, MLS Next Pro teams can't, they should be involved in it no matter who's fine. Make a rule that if you're signed to an MLS contract, you don't get to play, right? Like, because then you're not playing the MLS Next Pro side. You're playing the MLS Next Pro side with MLS players, which you can't have both, right? So I like the first one where it's like let whoever you want play, but you're out of the $25,000. But if you really want to keep them in and let them go, right? No loaning $8 million players down to the first team or the second team, right? Now that being said, he did absolutely nothing, right? The goal scorer was a true MLS Next Pro player, but it's just the idea of it, right? There's this feeling that you're like that over there just with everything else tied into it feels scummy, right? Like, oh, we don't want to play. We don't want, we want our it's not worth it to us, blah, blah, blah. Oh, but our MLS Next Pro team, we're going to put our $8 million guy down there because he hasn't played much and we want to give him some time. And this is the best time to do it. So we're going to put him on there. And again, with everything in the whole big picture, it's a really bad look. It's a really bad. I just don't like it. At the end of the day, it's very easy, right? If you're affiliated to an MLS side, you don't get $25,000, right? $25,000 doesn't even put a dent in the owner's pockets that are MLS, but they could be really good for NISA or USL1 to improve some conditions. It's an easy answer.
Yep, 100%.